I'm going to talk about the many wars and morality, or the psychological mechanisms employed by both sides, pro and anti, whoever or whatever, be it individuals, corporations, just a nation, or the government, to persuade themselves and others that their actions are not that harmful and are in fact sometimes necessary for the protection of the greater good. One of the tactics is known as moral justification, which means that we justify our harmful actions by portraying them as serving socially worthy or moral purposes. So, for example, what is the moral justification for war? We could say that it is self-defense. It's necessary to prevent a greater evil. It could be a tactic to preserve, ironically, human rights or democracy, or perhaps it is a last resort to preserve freedom. What about the matter of proportionality? Now, in war, do we respond proportionally to the actual aggression, or do we respond proportionally to how we feel about what happened? So, we use our moral beliefs, in fact, to justify harming others. In psychology, we call this a moral imperative. So, for instance, if I think that civilians, children, men, women are collateral damage in war, I could say to myself, I had no choice, or they forced my hand when ... or it was the right thing to do. I had a duty to act. I couldn't just stand by and watch. It was the only way. It was for the greater good. I had to follow my conscience. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do it. I had to stand up for what was right. I had to protect the innocent. I had to fight for justice. So, to act morally means we choose to do good things and avoid doing bad things, but we just convinced ourselves that we had no choice but to kill a civilian child, and that this, in fact, was a moral imperative. So, nothing screams moral high ground like making martyrs out of the unwilling. Thou shalt not kill unless you can write a good enough story about why you did it to yourself. In short, what's wrong is right if it feels right. So that's moral justification, and according to Bandura, you just signed off on that. It's sad but couldn't be helped that the child was killed. It was just collateral damage. Meaning you just sanctioned violence while still preserving your view of yourself as a moral agent. All this while inflicting harm on someone else, either directly or vicariously or indirectly. I'm going to be speaking about 3 other tactics in my next videos. The second tactic that Bandura spoke about is called as exonerative social comparison. To exonerate simply means to declare as not guilty of, or in other words, I'm not as bad as they are when I compare myself to others, and I start feeling better about myself. So, in fact, after such a comparison, I feel that my moral compass is quite okay. I'm good. I got good karma. I'm going to heaven. So, exonerative social comparison, that's what it's called, is when your self-talk is something like, compared to the real atrocities out there, my actions are nothing. Or I'm still on the right side of history, am I not? Or I'm not perfect, but I'm certainly not the villain here. I may not be a saint, but I'm not a sinner like them. Or in the grand scheme of things or scale of right and wrong, I'm leaning more towards the right. We may have killed 10 civilian children in the refugee camp, but look how many future murders we are saving by killing one terrorist hiding in there. Thirdly, he speaks of what he calls as displacement of responsibility, which is a psychological defense mechanism that you and I use to avoid feeling ashamed for our actions. And Philip Zimbardo, his Stanford prison experiment, is a good example of this. We attribute our actions to external factors or higher authorities rather than accepting personal responsibility for it ourselves. So, for instance, your self-talk could be that I did not kill that civilian child, I was just following the orders given to me and I am an honorable soldier. Besides, they started it. Or the system is to blame, not me, I'm just working within it. I'm a victim of circumstances, this just happens to be the role I'm assigned. I'm not the grand architect of this plan, I'm just a small tiny piece in this puzzle. Um, the real responsibility lies with those who make the rules, not those who follow them. I'm really good because I'm following rules. So the difference is that exonerative social comparison involves comparing oneself to others in order to minimize personal culpability, but displacement of responsibility involves attributing the responsibility for harmful actions to external authorities or forces. So it's not me, it's them. Then there is minimization of harm, which is a way people mentally reduce the seriousness of the negative impact of their actions. So in the context of Bandura's work, it's about people telling themselves lies or deviations or being in denial in order to feel less guilty or wrong about what they're doing or what they've done, because they've convinced themselves that the consequences aren't as severe as they actually are. So for instance, that wasn't really our bomb, that was their own bomb that killed those civilian children. So I'm okay, we are okay. Or we liberated them from the dictatorship that was oppressing them. And some civilians died in that process, but you know, look at the bigger picture. Or this is a necessary evil to prevent a greater one. This action, though harsh, will lead to a quicker peace and save future generations. Those statistics, they're not real. We didn't kill 4,000 children. We may have killed 3,000 at most. And finally, we've been hearing the word dehumanization. What does this mean? Now, this is a psychological process where we switch off the natural empathy that we feel for other people, which normally stops us from doing bad things. So we do this by seeing the other person as a non-living thing without the same feelings of happiness, sadness, joy, love for their families or children as us. So it's easier to kill your child if I think that your child and me and my child are not the same. In fact, you are not matter. You do not matter. So you cannot suffer, and I cannot put myself in your shoes. I don't. In fact, you are to blame for the harm that comes to you. You had it coming. So, or your children had it coming. And some of the self-talk is, you're not like us. You don't feel the pain, same pain the way we do. Or these are just enemy offspring. They'll grow up to be threats. You know, best to nip them in the bud. You're part of the problem. It's either you or us, and we are human, you aren't. You're casualties of a cause, a bad cause. You're not children with futures, and it's not like our children who are real. So Bandura put it very eloquently. I mean, he called war crimes the art of cognitively redefining the morality of killing so that it can be done free from self-censure. So there's no censoring, which means that we are expert at justifying killing of children via violent means because we see ourselves as fighting ruthless oppressors, being victims who are protecting our cherished values, preserving world peace, saving humanity from subjugation, or honoring our country's commitments. Now, these very highly moral justifications, they sanctify our very violent means. I am outraged by your killing my children, but not my killing of your. I see them as units or baby soldiers or future barbarians. There's also one more thing I need to speak about. There's many things, but euphemistic labeling is something that is, you know, everyone knows what a sanitizer is. So you sanitize language to justify atrocities. And you know, I thought of a list of headlines that highlight what Bandura meant. So euphemistic labeling or sanitizing headlines could be something like, the operation led to a number of premature terminations of non-combatant minors, which means we kill kids, or collateral population reduction occurred in the pursuit of peacekeeping objectives, or our forces encountered a regrettable but necessary youth depopulation event. You know, so language can be used to obscure the horrors of war and deny any ethical responsibility to confront such actions openly and honestly. We've seen words like enhanced interrogation techniques, which actually means torture, or regrettable collateral damage, which actually means dead children of civilians, necessary sacrifice of innocent life, which actually means mass murder, a surgical removal of non-combatant targets, which actually means bombing civilian areas, or preemptive neutralization of future threats, which actually means toasting children or preemptively killing civilians. Proportionate response actually means crimes, war crimes. Rendering extraordinary assistance to another government actually means helping them with killing or the means to kill. Then we've read headlines like soldiers waste people rather than kill them. There's absolutely nothing clean or surgical about a strike, especially on instead of in a hospital. So surgery happens in a hospital, surgical strikes on a hospital, not the same thing. I mean, these statements would win awards in a double speak competition. This is what Albert Banduras spoke about. I'm quoting him. The examples are mine, of course. The grievous dangers to human welfare are not so much due to impulsive actions, but rather result from deliberate choices to hurt or to look the other way. Obedience can lead to more severe crimes than protest and dissent, because individuals may suspend their own moral judgments no matter how morally upright they themselves are. And they do this because various psychological mechanisms can allow them, which means you and me, to disengage from our own moral standards. And so the lesson to be learned from here is we have to beware of ourselves. So I have to beware of myself. Cheers.